Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Horror Stories. I know many of you use these episodes to fall asleep, so before you drift off, I'd love it if you could leave a comment letting me know where you're listening from around the world. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe if you're enjoying the episodes. Story 1. In July 2022, on a Saturday that felt hotter than any other day that summer, I decided to take my 8-year-old son Ethan to the North Carolina State Fair, located on the fairgrounds in Raleigh. A traveling carnival had set up in the large gravel parking lot next to Carter Finley Stadium. Ethan hadn't stopped begging me to take him since he saw the bright mechanical rides from the highway a week earlier as we drove along Interstate 40. My wife had a 12-hour shift at the hospital that day, so the outing became a father-son adventure. I wanted it to be simple but fun, especially after 2 hard years marked by the pandemic. I also wanted Ethan to remember that his dad kept his promises. We parked around 10 in the morning. At that hour, the sun was already blazing, and the air carried that thick, distinctive smell of fried dough mixed with diesel generators. Ethan hopped out of the car in his red Braves cap and cargo shorts, jumping over the faded white lines in the parking lot. I locked the car, tucked the keys deep into my pocket, and memorized our location. Row B12, knowing that sea of vehicles would become a maze once it filled up. Ethan grabbed my hand as we crossed toward the ticket booth. The asphalt shimmered like water. We started off easy, with the Ferris wheel, to take in everything from above. From the top, the Raleigh tree canopy stretched green in every direction, and Ethan couldn't stop pointing at attractions, deciding which ones would be next. Below, the crowd swirled around the skill games. When we got off, Ethan tugged me toward the basketball hoop game. He was convinced he could win the giant panda hanging from the ceiling. I paid the attendant, but the ball bounced twice on the rim, and as expected, we walked away empty-handed. Ethan shrugged like it didn't bother him, though he kept glancing back at the panda. I promised we'd try again later. Around 11, the games area was packed. Whole families, teenagers, and grandparents walked shoulder to shoulder. Some people still wore masks, most didn't. The music from the loudspeakers mixed with the hum of ride engines and the voices of the barkers yelling, "Step right up." I bought Ethan some cotton candy that turned his lips blue. I also let him drown his corn dog in way too much ketchup. He kept thanking me over and over, and I felt invincible, the way only a proud father can. We spent an hour in Kittyland while I shielded him from older kids running wild like there were no rules. I forced myself not to check work emails. Around 1 o'clock, the sun was directly overhead, and I suggested we head to the shaded picnic tables near the fountain for something cold to drink. Ethan agreed, but asked to ride one more attraction, the kiddie roller coaster shaped like a dragon. The line snaked under a row of red flags. We joined at the end, and Ethan chattered nonstop about how brave he'd be when the dragon dropped. 15 slow minutes passed. The ride operator struggled to strap in a tall boy, which stalled the line. Sweat slid down my back. Ethan grew restless, shifting from side to side, his chatter finally quieting. I pulled out my phone to check how long until the magic show at 2 p.m., another of Ethan's plans for the day. As soon as the screen lit up, a warning popped up. Low battery, 10% remaining. I cursed myself for not charging it overnight. I glanced at the time, 1:37. That glance lasted maybe 3 seconds, and that was enough. When I looked up, Ethan was gone. At first, I thought maybe he'd crouched to tie his shoe or moved behind me. I spun in a quick circle. The line in front of the ride was moving again. No sign of Ethan. A pit opened in my stomach. I called his name, but my voice came out weak, drowned by the carnival noise. I rushed to the ride's entrance and asked a mother if she'd seen a boy in a red cap. She shook her head, distracted by her kids. Panic sharpened my senses. I sprinted back down the line, scanning for the cap, blue lips, any sign of Ethan. My phone nearly slipped from my sweaty hands. People brushed past me, some annoyed. A father asked if I was okay. I barely managed. I lost my son and kept running. The man pulled out his phone and said he'd keep an eye out, but his words faded. I kept telling myself not to waste time shouting. I needed help now. I headed to the information booth near the fountain. A volunteer, an older lady in a visor, listened calmly as I explained. She pressed a button on her radio and called security. They asked for Ethan's description, my name, phone number, and what I was wearing. They gave me a bright orange wristband and told me to stay near the booth in case Ethan came back. I nodded, though my body screamed to keep searching. 2 security officers arrived, a man and a woman, both in blue polos. He guided me toward the main carnival area while she headed for Kittyland. They assured me all exits were being watched and patrols were alerted. They asked if Ethan had a phone. I almost laughed. He was 8. Then they asked if he might be hiding as part of a game. I shook my head. Ethan loved adventures, but the idea of being separated from us terrified him. We retraced my steps. Time became my enemy. Every minute dragged like an eternity. I yelled Ethan's name again and again, not caring about the stairs. I tore through game booths where men dangled stuffed animals like bait. The guard reported over the radio. Still no news. He tried to keep me calm, saying kids often get lost and turn up nearby. I wanted to believe him, but couldn't shake the darkest images from my mind. I remembered Amber Alerts that had once blared on my phone in the middle of the night. I remembered stats about missing kids I'd read but never truly understood. 10 minutes after losing Ethan, though it felt like a lifetime, my phone vibrated. Unknown number. I answered before the first ring finished, praying it was Ethan using someone's phone. A broken voice said, "Sir, this is Officer Ramirez with the Fair Police. Are you looking for a boy with a red cap?" My legs nearly buckled. I said yes. I told him I was near the fountain. He told me to head toward the south parking lot, row B, but not to leave the guard's side. Uniformed officers were already on their way. Someone matching Ethan's description had been seen near a blue Honda CR-V. I blurted out a thank you and ran. The guard beside me struggled to keep up. The carnival felt endless. The crowd was a wall. My breathing roared in my head. I dropped my phone again, shoved it into my pocket without checking the screen. Row B came into view past the ticket booths. 2 patrol cars with lights flashing stood out. A crowd had gathered nearby. My heart pounded so hard I thought I'd faint before reaching Ethan. He stood about 30 yards away, next to a tall blonde man in dark sunglasses and a faded Carolina Hurricanes shirt. The man had a hand on his shoulder. Ethan looked pale, tearless, in shock. I shouted his name at the top of my lungs. He turned immediately. He tried to run to me, but the man gripped his shoulder tighter. That small tug was enough. 2 fair officers tackled the man and pulled him back. Ethan broke free and ran into my arms. I held him so tightly he squeaked. He buried his face in my chest and began to sob. I felt every tremble in his small body. The knot in my chest loosened just enough for me to breathe, but I didn't let go. The man kept repeating, "He's my son. You're making a mistake." Even as they cuffed him, an officer searched his pockets, took his wallet, and asked for ID. He said his name was Gary Thomas from Greensboro. He pointed at Ethan and said, "His name is Caleb. Ask him." But Ethan said nothing. He just clung to me, shaking his head. An older woman in a blue dress stepped forward. She told the officers she'd seen the man walking fast with a child who looked scared. She followed because something felt off. She heard Ethan say, "I want my dad," and knew this wasn't a family argument. She called 911. That call, officers later said, came in at 1:49 p.m., just 12 minutes after I lost Ethan. Paramedics checked Ethan in the ambulance. He had no injuries, except red marks on his arm where the man had grabbed him. They offered to take him to Wake Hospital for a full exam, but I just wanted to get him away from sirens and questions. After signing a release and giving 2 statements, one to Fair Police, one to Raleigh PD, I carried him to the car. Row B12 never felt so comforting. Inside the car, the air was stifling, but Ethan wouldn't let go of me. I started the engine and cranked the AC. My phone blinked at 5% battery. I managed to send my wife a text. "Ethan is safe, but was taken to the parking lot. Call me ASAP." I shut off the phone to save the last bit of power in case someone called again. We sat in silence. I stroked his hair, repeating, "You're safe now. I've got you." Finally, he whispered, "Dad." He told me he'd found my hat, that a man told him I was waiting in the car, that he said my phone had died and asked to take him. Ethan didn't have a phone, but in his confusion, he panicked. The man used that moment like a key. Ethan said that once they reached the parking lot, the man tried to guide him between two vans, away from the main row. That's when he screamed, and the woman in the blue dress saw them. I wanted to explode, hit the steering wheel, but instead I stayed calm and told him he did nothing wrong. I explained that adults can lie too, that not everyone who smiles is safe. We talked about trusting his instincts. He nodded but stared at his knees. I knew that look. Guilt. I told him exactly how I lost him. 3 seconds looking at my phone. My fault, not his. I promised I'd never forget what it felt like to lose him, and I asked him to help me be better. He said he would. My wife arrived half an hour later, pale, still in her scrubs. She hugged Ethan until he squirmed, then hugged me just as hard. Officers confirmed Gary Thomas had no relation to Ethan, no children. In his SUV, they found zip ties and a folding knife. He was charged with attempted abduction, endangering a minor, and carrying a weapon on fairgrounds. He offered no explanation, just kept saying Ethan was his. We drove home in heavy silence. Ethan fell asleep with his cheek against the window, dried tears on his face. My wife held his ankle like she could anchor him. I watched the road, my vision blurry. I'd never felt such terror. Not in war movies, not in cop shows, not even in nightmares. That night, we let Ethan sleep between us. Around 3 a.m, a thunderstorm rolled through Raleigh. Lightning lit up the room in pale blue flashes. Ethan mumbled something and curled closer to me. My wife's hand found mine, and in that moment I made a vow. Never again would a screen, a distraction, come between my eyes and my son. Not in a crowd, not in our backyard, not anywhere. A week later, detectives called. They'd found evidence Thomas had been lurking around fairs all over North Carolina for months. Security footage from Wilmington, Greensboro, and Fayetteville showed him walking alone through children's areas. He had a notebook with crude sketches of rides and notes like, "Too noisy, easy exit." Knowing that chilled me more than the day itself. Ethan wasn't a random choice. Someone had watched him, assessed him, and waited for the perfect moment. We enrolled Ethan in a child safety program that taught him how to scream, run, and find uniforms if he got lost. I attended every session with him. At the fair, new speakers now played safety messages every 15 minutes, encouraging parents to write their numbers on wristbands. I felt grateful and sick, knowing they had to live our nightmare to make those changes. Months passed. Fall turned oak leaves red. Winter brought cold nights. Spring buzzed with bees around the house. Ethan no longer wanted to wear his Braves cap, so we hung it on a hook by the door. Some mornings I'd pause, touch the brim, and feel a cold echo of that Carnival lot. I thought about throwing it away, but I couldn't. It's a reminder. 3 seconds can change a life. In July 2023, exactly a week after the anniversary, Ethan surprised me at breakfast. He asked if we could go back to the fair when the carnival returned. My stomach clenched, but I saw something firm in his eyes. He said he wanted to ride the dragon this time, to prove the bad man hadn't won. I didn't answer right away. My wife touched my arm and nodded. We went. I brought a power bank, my phone hanging from a neck lanyard, and a bright green wristband with my number printed twice. Ethan wore a new hat, blue from UNCC, and I didn't take my eyes off him for a second. We rode the dragon together. When it dipped slightly, he raised his arms and laughed. I shouted with him, but inside I guarded the memory of that scorching Saturday in 2022. I'll always carry it, like a scar that's invisible but never stops aching. Before we continue with the next story, if this is your first time visiting our podcast, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell to stay updated on our next terrifying stories. Your support means the world to us. If this story moved you, please share it with your friends and family. Thank you for being part of this community. Story 2. On Saturday, August 12, 2023, during the last summer, I drove about 65 kilometers from my apartment in Buffalo to spend the afternoon at the Erie County Fair in Hamburg, New York. I was 25 years old, single, and working too many hours in a small insurance office. The fair seemed like the perfect place to disconnect from stress, eat something fried, and let the memory of deadlines and pending tasks fade under the colorful lights. I arrived at the fairgrounds around 5 in the afternoon. The sun was still shining brightly, and the temperature hovered around 27 degrees Celsius. Country music played from the grandstands, and the humid air was thick with the smell of caramel corn and diesel generators. I paid $12 at entrance number 5, received a faded orange wristband, and entered the main promenade, already packed with families and couples. My first stop was the cotton candy stand at the north end of the grounds, the one with the spinning pink sign that says Jim's Sweet Treats. While I waited my turn, a clown appeared to my left and stopped at the corner of the booth. His outfit was old-fashioned, a loose yellow suit with red polka dots, huge blue shoes, and a plastic mask with a frozen smile. Under one eye, he had a single painted blue tear. He didn't say a word. He just watched the sugar spinning in the machine, tilting his head as if he were listening to a melody only he could hear. The woman running the stand handed me a portion the size of a basketball. As I turned to leave, the clown's head snapped toward me. We made eye contact. Well, I looked through the holes in his mask. I gave him a polite nod. He raised a gloved hand, wiggled his fingers in a small wave, and stepped aside to let me pass. I chalked it up to the typical fair atmosphere. After all, aren't clowns everywhere at fairs? Still, something about it unsettled me. The costume looked worn, almost dirty, and the mask had small cracks around the mouth. When you grow up seeing shiny mascots at sports events, a cracked mask makes you uncomfortable in a way that's hard to explain. Over the next hour, I wandered between the game booths. I tried to win a stuffed penguin at the ring toss game, but failed miserably. I laughed with a teenage girl who was trying too, then made my way to the haunted house called the Mirror Maze. The entrance was beneath a giant neon clown face that spun non-stop. I showed my wristband and climbed the painted wooden steps. Inside, the colored bulbs reflected endlessly in the mirrors. Carnival laughter and carousel music bounced through the narrow corridors. I walked carefully to avoid bumping into fake tunnels. Halfway through, I turned a corner and jumped. About 3 meters away, the same clown stood, one hand on his hip and the other pointing toward the exit, as if showing me the way. Up close, his mask looked older than I thought, maybe from the 80s. I murmured a thanks, though my heart was pounding, and walked past him. He didn't move. Outside, the sunset painted the sky violet over the fairgrounds. I tried to laugh off my nerves, blaming them on all the true crime podcasts I'd been listening to lately. I checked my phone. 7:20 p.m. I knew the fireworks would start at 9 p.m., so I still had time for dinner. I headed to the food area behind the grandstands and ordered a giant corn dog with freshly made lemonade. While I waited at the window, a small boy tugged on my shirt and whispered, "That clown is behind you." I turned, and sure enough, the same yellow-suited clown was leaning against a trash can about 6 meters away, staring directly at me. Parents and kids walked between us, but he didn't look at anyone else. Just me. A flash of irritation mixed with unease. Maybe he mistook me for someone else. Unlikely. Maybe I reminded him of someone. After all, fairs hire performers to wander and interact with the crowd. Maybe his job was to spook visitors a little. I decided to test that theory. I raised my phone as if to take a selfie, angling the camera to catch him in the background. As soon as the lens pointed his way, he raised his hand, placed a finger where his lips would be under the painted smile, and slowly shook his head side to side. I lowered my phone. The clown walked away, disappearing into the crowd. I forced myself to eat the corn dog, tried to relax on the giant wheel, and then spent $20 on a souvenir shirt. At 8:45, I decided to leave before the fireworks jammed the parking lot exit. I walked south toward exit gate 2, sipping the last of my lemonade. Just past the scanners, Route 62 runs along the fairgrounds fence. Evening traffic was moving normally. I was about 15 meters from the crosswalk when I looked left and froze. The clown stood on the opposite sidewalk, arms hanging at his sides, head tilted. Streetlights illuminated his polka dot suit. Behind him, a closed pet supply store. This time he didn't wave. He didn't move. A surge of fear pierced through me, sharper than anything I'd felt inside the fairgrounds. Out here, away from fair staff, he had no reason to still be in costume. My heart raced. I turned to go back and nearly ran into a security volunteer in a lime vest. I mumbled that I'd forgotten something and quickly re-entered the fair, slipping behind a row of portable toilets where the noise was quieter. I was breathing hard. I pulled out my phone and dialed 911. I gave my name, location, and explained what had happened. I told them the clown had been following me for hours and was now watching me from outside. They asked if he had threatened me. "He hasn't said a word," I replied, "but he keeps appearing. I feel stalked." They assured me a patrol car from the Erie County Sheriff's Office was nearby and would meet me at Gate 2. I thanked them, hung up, and cautiously peeked out from behind the toilets. I couldn't see the street completely. Just a few cars passing near the ticket booths. A couple of minutes later, a white van slowly entered the lot and stopped on the shoulder, headlights off. My stomach dropped. The passenger door opened. The clown climbed in calmly like he had all the time in the world. He shut the door, brake lights came on, and the vehicle drove north, disappearing behind the vendors' trailers. The patrol arrived about 3 minutes later. Too late. I flagged down the officer and blurted everything out. Officer Harris, a man in his 30s with calm eyes and a steady gaze, took notes. He walked with me along the perimeter road, flashlight sweeping between trucks and picnic tables. We searched for about 20 minutes. No van, no clown. Harris radioed other units, but no one matching the description had been seen. He warned that some fairs hire performers without background checks, and not all employees are formally registered. He filed an incident report and offered to escort me to my car parked in the overflow lot. The path led through a grassy area behind the barns, far from the noise of the rides. It was dark except for a few scattered security lights. Harris drove behind me until I unlocked my Civic. Before I got in, he asked if I lived alone. I nodded. He suggested inviting a friend over, or at least leaving the porch lights on all night. Then he followed me part of the way home before turning off at the highway. I reached my apartment in North Buffalo just after 11 o'clock. I parked under the only working lamp, ran up the metal stairs, and locked the door with both bolts. I made chamomile tea, turned on every light, and sat on the couch scrolling local news, searching for anything about a clown or a van. Nothing. My phone vibrated. A message from an unknown number. "See you at the next show." No name, just that phrase. My throat went dry. I blocked the number, grabbed kitchen scissors, and locked myself in the bathroom, where the running water muffled hallway sounds. I sat on the ceramic floor, leaning against the tub, trying to calm down. I replayed everything. The mirror maze, the stare behind the trash can, the silent gesture. A clown's smile is always fake, but that mask felt personal, like it was laughing at a private joke. Around 1 a.m., headlights lit my bedroom wall. I crawled to the window and peeked through the blinds. A white van sat at the far end of the parking lot, engine humming softly. The driver's door opened. Someone got out. Too far to see if they wore a costume, but the silhouette had broad shoulders and a narrow waist. They walked behind the van, rummaged inside for a minute, shut the doors, and got back in. They drove off without turning on the headlights. There was no license plate on the back, just 2 empty holes. I called 911 again. This time, Buffalo police sent a patrol to check the area. They didn't find the van. The officer suggested I stay with family for a few days. My parents lived in Rochester, about 110 kilometers away, and had work early. I didn't want to bother them, but fear outweighed pride. I packed a backpack with my laptop and a couple of changes of clothes. Before leaving, I instinctively checked my mailbox. Inside was a glossy flyer for a traveling carnival. Lake Ontario Traveling Fun Fair. Opening night, August 18th, Rochester, New York. On the cover, a clown in a yellow suit, red polka dots, and a cracked smile. My hands shook so badly the paper fell. I spent the rest of that night and the entire weekend at my parents' house. Monday, I called the Erie County Sheriff's Office for a follow-up. Officer Harris told me no one else had reported a stalking clown, but there would be more patrols during the fair's final days. He asked if I could come in to identify potential suspects from records of known carnival workers. I agreed. The photo albums were thick, men and women in costume without makeup, some with beards, tattoos. After an hour, I saw a face that tightened my chest. Kenneth Kenny Polinsky, 47, charged in 2016 with unlawful restraint of a minor at a Pennsylvania fair. He pleaded guilty to assault and served 18 months. Since release, he'd wandered across several states. One of his known aliases, Giggles the Clown. Officer Harris noted the name on a form and thanked me. They never found Polinsky or the white van. When I asked for updates in October, the detective said the case had gone cold. The Lake Ontario Traveling Fun Fair completed its run in Rochester without incident, but I never went near it. Since then, I checked police bulletins for news about clowns, vans, or missing people near fairs. Sometimes I dream of mirror mazes and painted fingers pressed to silent lips. Now I carry pepper spray in my purse. I park only under lights, memorize license plates, and don't trust any costume at public events. People call it paranoia. I call it survival. Because on a summer night in 2023, a clown stepped out of fantasy and into my reality. And he's still out there, waiting for his next show. Story 3. When I was 13, the Erie County Fair in Hamburg, New York felt like the biggest place I had ever seen in my life. It was Sunday evening, August 20th, 2017. The second to last night of the event, and the sunset smeared the sky pink over the grandstands. My stepdad dropped off my 3 friends and me near entrance number 5 and once again reminded us to stick together and meet him by the Ferris wheel at 9 o'clock. I slipped my old flip phone into my pocket, trying to look confident, even though I had never been alone in such a large crowd before. We were kids from the suburbs of Buffalo, and for us the fair was the grand adventure of summer. The main promenade buzzed with the sound of generators and classic rock covers. The smell of diesel from the rides mixed with popcorn, cow manure from the barns, and something sweet frying in the funnel cake truck. My best friend Marcus was 12 but taller than me. His cousin Jalen and my neighbor Lily walked beside us, wide-eyed with wonder. We won a cheap plush basketball at the milk bottle game, crunched across the gravel toward Kittyland, and spent too much of our allowance on lemonade refills. None of us noticed the tiny flicker of trouble beginning just a few yards away. It happened near Bert Widener's chicken and meat stand, right on the edge of Kittyland. It was a low white trailer with red stripes and a hand-painted menu. A faulty extension cord under the counter sparked and caught a grease-stained cardboard box, producing a flame the size of my thumb. According to workers later, they heard a small pop and saw the flashes under the stand. Within seconds, the flame climbed up the oil-soaked siding, turned orange, then blue, and reached the propane line. Someone yelled for a fire extinguisher. Another tried to shut the valve, but it was too late. The funnel cake stand next to it began to glow red from the reflection of the fire. The fairground's loudspeaker system screeched, but the announcement came too late. A blast of heat hit the front of the stand, sending up a swirl of black smoke. People in line ran, tipping over strollers and spilling drinks. I was drinking a slushie when the first wave of people hit us. Someone screamed, "Fire, run!" and the crowd surged like a tide. I lost my balance and grabbed Lily's backpack strap, but let go immediately as I saw her dragged toward the kids' ride area. Panic spread faster than the flames. Parents lifted small children, groups of teenagers clung together, and strangers pushed in every direction. Smoke rose above the tilt-a-whirl's lights, making everything look like a haunted carnival. I felt Marcus's elbow but lost sight of him when another shove spun me around. Jalen tripped and nearly lost a shoe. I yanked him up and screamed Lily's name, but my voice was swallowed by the roar of panic. Fair workers tried to cut through the stampede with fluorescent flashlights, but the human mass was out of control. The safest exit was the main promenade, but everyone was trying to get there at once. Lily, smaller than most adults, slipped between a popcorn cart and Kittyland's picket fence. I saw her climb a small retaining wall and disappear into a service path behind the kiddie roller coaster. The path ended at a large maintenance gate, a metal mesh fence over 2 meters tall, locked with a padlock, because that part of the grounds was under renovation. I ran after her, dragging Jalen, who was limping from a twisted ankle. At the entrance to the path, an older security guard tried to block the way, holding back the crowd. I ducked under his arm before he could stop me, but Jalen didn't make it through. The guard pushed him back toward the promenade. I yelled that my friend was ahead of me, but his radio crackled with orders and he turned away. I had to decide in seconds, follow Lily alone or stay with Jalen. I chose Lily. Past the fence, the crowd noise faded slightly. Spotlights lit up the metal roller coaster rails, casting long shadows on the cracked asphalt. I ran, breathing in smoky air, until I saw Lily banging on the gate's padlock. Beyond it stretched a narrow alley between game trailers, a kind of shortcut to the rear parking lot. Panic had driven her inward, not outward. I tried the lock, rusted, unmoving. I shook the chain. Lily's face was smudged with soot, eyes wide with fear. Behind us, the ride lights flickered as the fair's electrical system failed from overload. More flames burst from the roof of the food stand. We heard a pop, like a balloon bursting, a propane tank venting pressure before the firefighters arrived. I searched for something to break the chain. About 20 meters away, the maintenance shed, a simple shipping container, had its door ajar. I ran to it, dumped a bucket of screws, and searched for tools. I found a pair of heavy bolt cutters, like the ones the school janitor used to break bike locks. They weighed about half of me. I dragged them back to the gate, fit the jaws around the chain, and squeezed. Nothing. I repositioned myself, knees shaking, and this time used all my weight. A link groaned and snapped. The chain dropped. The gate opened. Lily stumbled through, but the alley beyond wasn't empty. 2 college-aged guys also trying to escape were debating whether to climb the rear fence into the parking lot. They stopped when they saw us. One cursed and said we were going to get them in trouble. The other told him to chill and helped us. He boosted Lily up quickly and offered me a hand, but I hesitated. The way back was clear now. Firefighters were already putting out the flames. Somewhere in that crowd were Marcus and Jalen, maybe hurt, maybe looking for us. I told Lily to stay on the safe side and went back. The smoke in the grounds had lifted a bit, leaving a sweet burn smell. Hamburg volunteer fire sirens wailed along the perimeter road, and announcements played over the speakers urging calm and evacuation through the main exits. Easier said than done. Vendors dragged gas tanks away. Ride operators shut down attractions mid-cycle. Lights flickered. I retraced my steps to Kittyland and almost ran into the same guard who'd blocked me before. Now he was directing people behind a yellow plastic barrier. I yelled that my friend was injured near the funnel cake stand. It wasn't entirely a lie. Jalen's ankle was messed up, and the guard finally let me through. Marcus appeared first, standing on a picnic bench scanning faces. His shirt and neck were dusted with powdered sugar, like someone had dumped a pastry on him. But he looked relieved when he saw me. He'd lost his phone in the stampede and thought I'd been trampled. We turned the corner around a popcorn stand and found Jalen sitting on a cooler, pale, his ankle swollen inside a Fair-branded sock. 2 paramedics in fluorescent vests were treating him, wrapping his foot with an elastic bandage. I told them Lily was safe by the back gate, but that I had been really scared. One paramedic radioed their supervisor. The other gave me a disposable mask for the lingering smoke. What took minutes felt eternal. Eventually, the flames died. The food stand was charred but still standing. According to the news, there were no serious injuries or animals harmed. The The petting zoo goats were evacuated in time, but at least 7 people suffered minor burns, and dozens were treated for smoke inhalation or being trampled. The fairgrounds evacuated everyone except essential staff. My stepdad found us near the now-closed shooting booth, eyes shining with worry. He had Lily wrapped in his jacket, her tear-streaked face saying between sobs that she thought everything was going to explode. We waited an hour in the heavy night as officers took statements. I told one officer about the broken chain, expecting to be scolded, but he just nodded, glad that people could escape because of it. The guys who helped Lily were gone. Inspectors examined the food stand with flashlights, scanning the scorched wires. A reporter pointed a mic at exhausted families. A drone with red lights hovered above, filming for the 10 o'clock news. All the carnival music had stopped, and with the rides off, the fairgrounds looked like a skeleton under the moon. At home past midnight, our parents ordered pizza because no one felt like sleeping. We sat on the living room floor, silent, watching cell phone videos, orange flames screaming, people running with shaky cameras. Every so often, Lily startled, and Marcus wrapped an arm around her. Jalen's ankle was propped on 2 pillows, the purple bruise looking unreal. I realized that 14 hours earlier, our biggest worry was winning another plush toy. The sound of laughter was now replaced in my memory by the sound of ambulance sirens. In the following days, local shows debated safety regulations and whether propane should be allowed near kids' rides. The fair reopened 3 days later with stricter rules, but none of us went back that year. When school started, teachers asked us to write an essay about what I did this summer. My classmates wrote about beach trips or video games they'd bought. I wrote about the smell of burning plastic, the sound of a chain breaking, and how quickly fun can turn into fear. My English teacher underlined my last sentence. I had never felt so small in a place meant for fun, and in the margin she wrote, "Vivid, are you okay?" It's been 8 years since that night, and as I record this memory, I still live in Western New York. Every August, when fair posters show up on utility poles, my friends tease me for not wanting to go. But I can't stand the smell of roasted chicken near dusty rides. One night, driving through Hamburg after closing time, I passed the fairgrounds. The Ferris wheel lights were off, but employee flashlights glowed like fireflies as they cleaned up. For a moment, I remembered Lily's terrified face behind that locked gate. My hands gripped the steering wheel until the scene slipped away in the rearview mirror, like a nightmare fading at dawn. People think a stampede sounds like a single roar, but the real horror is the thousands of separate sounds. Shoes scraping asphalt, metal fences clanging, parents screaming names that vanish into smoke. Those sounds stay with you. I still hear them when an alarm blares too long in a store or when sparklers explode on the 4th of July. It's not exactly a panic attack, but my heart remembers that night. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't found those bolt cutters. Maybe security would have arrived in time, maybe not. All I know is sometimes you only get one choice, to run or to move forward, and everything after depends on that moment. I was 13 and scared, but I ran toward the danger. The gate opened and my friend walked out. That should be enough to close the memory with hope. And yet fire leaves phantom shapes even after the embers die. They flicker at the edge of ordinary nights, reminding me how thin the line is between fun and disaster.